welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. This is the Masterpiece Arms Matrix Pro Rimfire. Now this is a serious PRS rimfire rifle and it was lent to me at the British Shooting Show by Josh at C2 Precision. So please look in the link below and you'll see in the description the actual link to Josh's company, more information about this rifle, because the first thing I've got to say about this rifle is PRS rifles are exclusively designed to be very modular, very customizable. I'm not sure if that's a real word, for the shooter to completely customize it to exactly what their preferences and needs are. The main aim of this rimfire is to actually deliver a chassis and barrel action which is the ultimate in precision really for a rimfire cartridge. Now of course centerfire rifles, PRS and things like that, you can modify your ammunition to suit your barrel, whereas in a rimfire you're pretty much restricted to the ammunition you've got and you then have to sort of modify your rifle to suit the ammunition, so to speak. Now Josh gave me this rifle, he'd been to have it set up and actually customised and tuned with Ely 10X ammunition. He did supply me some 10X ammunition with it, which you'll see shortly does shoot phenomenally well. But the whole point was this comes with an ATS barrel tune on it. It's a very heavy 30mm diameter barrel. This is the 23-inch barrel option. There are various different options on the rifle, and you can also choose between a 16-inch and a 12-inch twist rate. This is the 16-inch twist rate, which is probably a little bit more suitable to most rimfire ammunition, but of course it's specifically chambered for supermatch cartridges like Ely 10X and its equivalent, with very close tolerances for head spacing to get the most precision out of them. Now of course that tuner does allow you to give a slight harmonic tune to the barrel and it can then vary into use perfectly for that ammunition. But of course if you're batch testing things like 10X, you can go through critically different tolerances to find the batch which perfectly suits your rifle, or well, I say perfectly, suits it as well as any rimfire ammunition is ever going to suit it. These barrels are 416R stainless, they are hand lapped and it is a beautiful thing. I have bore scoped it and it is one of the finest barrels I've seen. It's called MPA Spencer, so MPA have obviously combined with a company called Spencer perhaps to make these 416 barrels, 416 stainless steel obviously, and it's a beautiful thing to look at. But you won't see me dancing around too much with this rifle yet, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, because the bare rifle alone, 6.8 kilograms, which is 15 pounds, and set up like it is with this zero compromise optic, the mount on it, ignoring the bipod for the second, that's 8.3 kilograms, which is 18 pounds. So, you know, it's a meaty thing to pick up and put around. Now, it's got full-length Arca rail on the underside, and I've fitted a tier 1 bipod to it. I'm not a PRS shooter. I wasn't going to start shooting PRS or competition because really I wanted to see what sort of level of precision was available from the rifle before a suitable buyer who wants this kind of gun is going to tune it to exactly their needs. But when we're looking at it, you can see we've got a full-length Arca rail on the underside, and there is also a steel Arca rail extension on the front because this is Cerakoted. It's available in lots of different colours. Yellow may or may not be your choice, but there are other colours which are a little bit more modest. That would obviously, you know, show a bit of marks over time with shooting it from a tripod or anything like that, anything using the Arca rail. So that steel extension in the front there does allow it to just be a little bit more brutal, if you want to talk about it that way. And of course, when you are shooting from a prone position, it gives you the maximum support length between any rear bag you're using, and of course the bipod feet at the front, so you've got the maximum stability for that ultimate precision rifle setup. You can see we've got a handguard on top here. It's two components. These are obviously modular, so you could add more if you wanted. These also add weight to it. And we've got lots of M-lock slots and additional mounting points, including QD sling swivel points for adding additional weight if that's what you want to suit the balance of your rifle. Moving back along here, it's not kind of got a square barricade stop and it's not serrated on the front either, but it does have screw fixings here, so you could probably add something to it. And that's obviously going to lock into whatever you're leaning into and pushing against making your shots in PRS competition. The stock is what's called Matrix Pro from MPA. This is available in centerfire as well, so of course it crosses over and you can have it in that centerfire rifle as well as your rimfire rifle. And of course this is a Voodoo 360 action that's being used by MPA, and that's a Remington 700 footprint, so that gives you commonality across your rifle chassis and action styles as well. This also takes a Remington 700 style trigger, and this one has MPA's trigger, which is basically a Bix and Andy trigger, and it's adjustable from 4 to 32 ounces, which is 275 to 2,200 grams. It's fully adjustable, and you've got huge slots on the underside here to access those trigger adjusting screws. Now the trigger is one of the most unusual things about it, one of the most things that's probably absolutely PRS, because these grips are available for Masterpiece arms in slightly different inclinations and setups. It's a very vertical grip, but because realistically it's a thumb hole stock, but you're not holding it like a thumb hole rifle, because you're kind of pinching the grip at the front here and your fingers actually wrapping round it, and it's almost precluded from touching the trigger, so only really the tip of your finger is going to fit on the trigger. And of course you've got a thumb rest on the side there. If you're left-handed you might go for a right-handed grip, etc. Now the bolt release catch is on the left side, so if I just pop the bolt out we can see this essentially Voodoo 360 bolt. It's got 3 lugs on it here, 1, 2, 3 lugs there, and those actually bite into abutments in the rear action bridge here, so effectively the front end of the bolt is floating. Now it's not rotationally floating, it's just how a lot of rimfire rifles work, and the Voodoo 360 does of course give you superb lightweight bolt manipulation, and the point of that is that when you are in a fast fire situation, and aiming is one of your absolute priorities, because the weight of the rifle keeps the stability, and we'll talk about recoil in a second, but one of the points of the Masterpiece Arms rifle is you really do want that fingertip light, so it's disrupting your point of aim as little as possible. There's a mag release on the front of the trigger guard here, so out comes your mag, and that's of course AICS size, so it gives you commonality and manipulation between your centerfire and your rimfire, again if you want to use your rimfire as a trainer. But of course it's a 2.2 magazine, and it's got buttons on the side there, so you can release pressure off it when you want to load it a little bit quicker, and that's got a red follower, so it's easier to see and you know when you've actually finished your shooting detail and routine. But that bolt is very light, very smooth, and it's great to shoot actually, because it does exactly what they want it to do. It doesn't disturb the rifle's aim point. There is also, you can probably see that on the ceiling cam, there's a little bubble in here to help you avoid cant issues and things like that. You've got a cocked action indicator on the back here, gives you an idea if the rifle's fired or not. As I said, bolt release catch on the side, and you've got a nice bolt handle which is not too long, serrated end on it, and it really does give you the perfect length so you don't jam that relatively short bolt travel length. I can't even make that jam if I deliberately try and jam it, and shooting the rifle was an absolute pleasure in that respect. At the back in here we've got adjustable length of pull, simple rubber recoil pad, grips in your shoulder nicely. You can adjust that for position because we've got all sorts of slotted holes on here if you want to permanently move it on the 2 posts. Depending on exactly which chassis you choose, you can choose between grub screws or thumb screws, depending on if you want to change your length of pull repetitively or if you prefer to just set it and leave it. On the bottom here we've actually got a bag rider, and that bag rider has got a spring lock there, so you can pop that out as and when you want it to use it for the positions you're shooting from. And on top you've got a nice slim adjustable cheek piece comb there which will fit, I can't even pick it up, that fits under your cheekbone, it doesn't displace your jaw sideways. Of course the chances of shooting this rifle completely unsupported are I think pretty much zero. You're always going to be shooting from a rest, a barricade, you know, a tank trap, something like that, maybe a tripod, maybe even a bipod. I shot it from the bipod and the tripod, and it was very stable to use in each because of course that physical mass does dampen all human input you might mistakenly be adding toward the rifle. Of course PRS, you're probably going to shoot it thumb upon the thumb rest, so no one's really going to be using the actual thumbhole stock itself, but there are different varieties to this, and check out the C2 Precision website because it does show you all the options. But it is a beautifully made rifle. Josh actually needs this back quickly because it's going directly to competition, so I haven't manipulated or changed the tuner brake or anything like that. I haven't taken it out of its chassis to show you the bottom of the action or the trigger, but the Bixen Andy is probably fairly well known, and a Remington 700 inlet is exactly a Remington 700 inlet. So it's a round action, cylindrical action, sorry, with a radiused inlet, and that is machined to fit. You could have it bedded if you really wanted to, but they are precision machined, and of course the action from being a voodoo action is also precision machined, so they should mate together perfectly without any implied stress within the system. And you can't help but knock that in terms of its lightweight and slick stability. Now, I shot this with a 10x ammunition, real world conditions. I tried to keep out the wind as much as possible, and I'm not the perfect shooter, but you sort of get used to shooting the rifle and setting it up and just getting used to the trigger, which is very light. It's only about 6 ounces, the trigger, as I was using it, and you're sort of moving through these groups. And I shot 60 rounds in total, and you know, these latter ones here, these are 10 round groups at 100 meters, which I did find very, very impressive. I mean, that measures 14.6 millimeters center to center, 13.6. That's 24.3, but it just goes to show you how one shot can throw the whole group, and that could be the wind, it could be you. And of course, with a rifle this heavy, it's just not moving anywhere. Once you put it down, it stays in place, and of course your physical contact with it is most likely going to be what's going to disturb that perfect precision group in an ideal situation, and that's before you get into things like crosswind and stuff like that. But average velocity worked out 1,083 feet per second, which is just over 100 foot-pounds. You know, muzzle energy is not particularly critical on a rifle like this, but what was most important, over a 60 shot string with the identical same ammunition, nothing had ever been put differently through the barrel. It had been running with 10x, used with 10x, shot on paper with 10x, chronographed with 10x, and on that 60 round string it showed a 71 foot per second extreme spread. But I think that is the reality of the real world when you are shooting one of these things, and it's something you've got to favour in. Of course, depending on what ammunition you want to use, whether you have the rifle setup specification different, you might go for the 12-inch twist rate if you were using, you know, specifically the custom loaded heavy 2-2 rimfire ammunition, but I think the 16 will be the most popular. And of course, barrel length is going to have a huge difference in terms of what velocity you get, because if you go down to one of the short barrels, you might not squeeze it over 1,000 feet per second. Alternatively, you can actually then take your ammunition, you can tune it as you like, you can batch test the ammo as you like, and there you go. The rifle becomes your little project gun to shoot for PRS competition. Right, well, I hope you've enjoyed that review. It's not my usual thing doing PRS rifles, and I'm certainly not going to say I'm a PRS competitor or using it in a PRS environment, but I will say, in terms of its pure precision from a mechanical perspective and the interface with the human, it's a very, very precise rifle. You can expect that accuracy to stay day after day after day because the bedding's excellent. The Remington 700 system for bedding is well proven. The stock is, of course, ultra rigid, and the rifle itself is fundamentally ultra heavy, so it has got stability within it completely. You can choose whatever you like to add to the M-lock, to change the accessory weight, change the balance of the rifle. You can change the trigger to a lighter or heavier if you want to, length of pull, cheek piece position. That is all about PRS to you. But to me, I cannot disagree. This is an extremely precise 2-2 rimfire rifle, and it's a pleasure and a joy to shoot. And if you've got the circumstance and scenario for it, I would highly recommend it. But you just can't knock what Masterpiece Arms have set out to produce and provide. It's got a Picatinny rail on top, bolted to the action, so you know you're not going to have any problems with scope mounting. I think that might be a 10 MOA inclination, but I'm not just 100% sure. It's not marked. I'm doing that on visual looks alone. You can obviously specify that kind of thing as you want for your competition use. But for a multi-range rifle, you don't always need huge amounts of elevation. It's all about having it somewhere in the mid-range so you can get to the optical centre of your scope and dial as you want it to. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that review. Please like, subscribe, comment, click the notification bell, and keep track of my regular uploads. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.